So a super wonderful friend of mine recently told me that they were willing to change people's behaviour before they change their mind. Now that might sound terribly totalitarian and tyrannical to you, but frankly, I'm not bothered. I'm more than happy to block you or delete your comments willy-nilly just to stop you engaging on a safe space forum if you're upsetting people long before you realise what a big jerk you've been. So this week's supposed to be about trolls, but I didn't really want to talk about that very much because A, they're not worth it, B, Becca pretty much covered that solidly in her video yesterday, so you should check that out, and C, they're pretty easily dealt with by just sticking a wand up their nose. So instead of trolls, I wanted to touch on triggers instead, which is something really important in feminist spaces and is often shouted down by trolls. You'll often hear people in debates and things like that saying how overly emotional women are getting, which is ridiculous because I didn't really think there was anything wrong with being emotional or a good level of emotion, and anything on top of that is bad. Yeah, over emotional or hysterical or whining or whingy or crying or weak, that's the big one, that you're being so weak. Why can't you just talk about this like a reasonable, rational human? You know, we're all adults here, right? And this is what democracy is based on. Yeah, I don't buy that. You know, we can discuss things, but you know, when one person is coming from a position of privilege and the other person is getting the shit kicked out of them in a debate, just because the other person isn't listening, and the person who's having the shit kicked out of them is someone who's lower on the social pecking order through no fault of their own, it's not really a fair fight, is it? Triggering is a lot more than just offending the delicate sensibilities of the poor lady folk. It's when you say or do something which provokes an extremely strong and damaging reaction in someone who has suffered a traumatic experience in their life. Jokes, threats, denial of awful things such as rape, abuse, racism, transphobic attacks, murder, the list sadly goes on and on and on. These can cause symptoms running from flashbacks, nausea, self-harm, fainting, seizures, exhausting sense of claustrophobia, you know, emotional just devastation, and it's hideous to go through, and there are as many symptoms as there are triggers. And you know, you're not just making someone cry, though that in itself is a bad thing. You know, you're potentially putting them through hell just by saying something that, you know, you from a privileged position might not actually think is that bad a thing to say. You don't know who's going through these experiences, who has suffered these experiences in the past, and really you should just try and be a bit mindful of that, I think. Not all triggers are foreseeable. I used to have to escape from rooms whenever someone put on a song by Maroon 5 just to stop myself throwing up and breaking down. Generally speaking, if you're going to be talking or commenting or writing a blog post or making a vlog about anything that's, you know, quite sensitive or is likely to have upset people in the past, you know, it's kind of common courtesy to post like a trigger warning. These are normally just kind of in big, bold, fuck off caps locks, lots of stars around them, just saying, you know, trigger warning, this post talks about, and then a little saying, you know, if it talks about something like abuse or mental illness or an eating disorder, something like that. Just so if someone has experienced those things and does get upset reading about them, because it reminds them of what's happened in their life, it just stops people being caught off guard, really. And if you are talking to someone on an internet forum or whatever, and they start to get upset, like, don't take that as a sign of victory and carry on. Like, shut the fuck up and leave the conversation. You don't know what kind of long-lasting damage you could be doing. Like, it's all about just respecting people's feelings and being a lovely person who doesn't want to go around treading on other people like they don't care, just for the sake of getting like a win on an internet forum. It's kind of ridiculous, really. That's all me and my Justin Bieber haircut have to say. See you next week.